with anonymous, confidential, etc. You are also free to ask us questions. So if you have any questions that you have, or if you think we should be looking for anything, you're more than welcome to raise those points. Yes, and yeah. So would you like to record, Piero? Or?
Yes, I asked him, and he said he has
okay.
no problem, and it's on.
Okay. Could you please tell us about your main role in the program?
Yeah, so it's Key E2, which stands for Key Expert number 2. I'm in charge of 2 tasks mainly. Task B, which is general promotion and relations with multipliers, and Task C, which is common branding and communications. So I oversee these 2 tasks in Europe, definitely, and I also coordinate with the local teams in the target markets in Asia when it comes to branding and promotion. Although they are autonomous and they can, of course, work on their own promotional strategy when it comes to the specificities of Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, and so on.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Right.
So that's helpful. We will go into some specific questions, and then maybe we'll come back just to, since given that you're a key member of the team, we wondered if you had an opinion about the relevance of this program and how consistent it is with the objective of the partnership instrument, in particular objective number 3, which is looking at enhancing market access, boosting trade, investment and business opportunities. How consistent do you feel is the objective program contributing to this objective in your own words?
Yeah, well, I would say that it's right on target. This is exactly what we're doing. Sometimes my answers tend to be short.
Fine.
So that would have been my answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And now that we are at the halfway point, I think 2 full cycles have already been implemented. Yes. How far do you feel has the program methodology and its activities contributed to the achievement of the objectives of the program, which are best to strengthen the presence of European companies in key markets?
So how does this methodology have helped to reach this objective?
Yes.
And also you can refer to the communication methodology.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm not really that familiar, of course, with all the other tasks. But definitely this approach is very structured. So we have the EU Gateway methodology, and at least in my case it's working. We started first focusing on the branding. That was the first step I had to take into account, because at the time we did not have business mission to promote. The program hadn't started yet. So with this methodological approach, still in terms of communication, there was something to do, namely branding. And after we have, let's say, set the basis for the communication, we also started to gain critical mass in terms of content, which we could have used for the other activities, namely general promotion, for example, and communications. So I think the methodology that was suggested to the client, to the European Commission, actually helped me to structure my work and to start doing something without maybe having had past experience with the previous editions of the program. I think the methodology definitely contributed to a faster and a smoother start and kick-off of the program, at least in my case for task B and C.
And since the program was running since the 19th, no? Was it?
In Japan, it started in
Japan.
1990. The pilot started in 1990.
And then you had a full period before this. What is the difference between the old branding strategy and the new one, let's say?
In terms of branding, I would say that the previous editions of the program were mainly focusing on one market, Japan, and then on Japan and Korea. Then there was a pilot which did not include Japan nor Korea. It was based in Southeast Asia, and this new edition combines all the previous editions. So the main challenge for branding was how to keep the history and the legacy from the past and from all these different markets and merge them together all in one.
Okay. And sorry, you could continue. Even if I make just to make a question, you can continue. And the logo was redesigned.
Yes, it was redesigned. So, do you want me to be more specific
Yes,
on the branding and the logo? Okay. So, as I said, one of the main challenges was to provide continuity, let's say, from the previous editions, but also to make it clear that this was something new and that we were combining the best from all the previous editions. So there are some visual elements from the previous logo which were kept, namely the gateway. So the EU Gateway Business Avenues logo is comprised of three elements. One is the gateway, which is blue, recalling the colors of the EU, but not that close because the client didn't want to have it look so bright blue as the EU flag. So it's a different shade of blue, but still that's the connection. That's the first item, the gateway, which comes from Asian gate in Korea, in Japan. That's the shape they have. Then we have a calligraphic sign going through the gate, representing, of course, access to these markets. It used to be gray in the previous edition. We have changed it to green for two reasons. One, because this program had a green focus, let's say, which is in line, of course, with the European strategy, and also because green was a color used in during the pilot in Southeast Asia, which was the EU Business Avenues. The other challenge and the other third part of the logo is the wording, it's the name of the program. So we had the previous editions up until 2014, from 1990 to 2014, which were called EU Gateway or Gateway to Japan or to Japan and Korea. But then the pilot had a different name. It was chosen by the previous contractor because after a research they found out that gateway as a term was overused in Southeast Asia, and they decided that business avenues would have sounded better to sell the program. So the pilot was called Business Avenues, and that's why the new program is combining all these experiences, and it's called EU Gateway Business Avenues. And this EU Gateway Business Avenues is the last part of the logo.
And don't you think it's too long?
I think it's too long. Of course, if compared to a shorter one, but the previous one was EU Gateway to Japan and Korea, and this is probably longer. I have to check on the characters count, but more or less it's the same length. But it's also true that within the specific markets in Asia, we are not known as EU Gateway Business Avenues, but simply as EU Gateway to Korea or EU Gateway to China, and so on. We had two options when it came to branding. The one we have adopted is can be called a derivative approach. For example, like Apple, you have the iPhone, the iPad, and so on. It's all I something, and it's the same kind of approach we're using now with EU Gateway. We have the EU Gateway to something, to somewhere.
Okay.
And also the logo is the same, just like for the iPhone, the iMac, and the iPad. It's always the Apple. And in our case, it's always the gateway with the calligraphic sign. Initially, we had thought about coloring differently the calligraphic sign. So, for example, EU Gateway to China would have had a red light instead of a green line going through the gate. But then, since the effort was in combining all these different pilots and experiences from the past, we decided to go for a more consistent visual identity. And that's why it's always the same gateway with the same green calligraphic sign going through it. The only part that changes is the name.
So, even that if you consider to add the business avenues, because you said that gateway was a word that was, I didn't get it.
So in Southeast Asia, the previous contractor, after a research, understood that gateway was overused. Too many initiatives.
Too many initiatives.
Yeah, we're using this word.
But despite this, let's say you can say that the program is already recognized as EU Gateway more than Business Avenues. That's it. Because you could have chosen to call the program EU Business Avenues and get out the gateway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But now
But then I would have lost all the history dating back till 1990, and that's with Japan and Korea, and that's where we're strong, because we are a name. I couldn't waste or give away this part of the branding. The name is also, of course, a part of the brand.
Is there any risk to, because I saw there is a terms of reference that says EU Green Gateway to Japan.
Yes.
Yes. So,
Business Avenue to Japan or something like this.
So the TOR calls the program differently, a Green Gateway to Japan, for example, and also to Korea. Together with the client, so with the European Commission, we decided to adopt this name and to get rid of the green part, because we thought it would have been comprised in the green calligraphic sign and of course in also all the other materials promoting the sector. But this is not true for Japan when it comes to their local promotional strategy, because although in Europe we call it EU Gateway to Japan, in Japan itself the program is known and sold as EU Green Gateway to Japan.
I see.
This is what I was asking, why I was asking this, because if you in a, let's say, official document, you do this, then you damage a bit this branding effort, like to call the program in the same way in every market, target market, and give and I think that you have to homogenize a bit the way you, for example, you can add the to Japan, to China, or to Southeast Asia, but then each page has to relate to the main program, like or to not only through the logo but also through the name of the program. And I see that for Southeast Asia, the logo is not EU Gateway to Southeast Asia, it's EU Business Avenues
in Southeast Asia. And that's because the program in Southeast Asia was born as EU Business Avenues in Southeast Asia, while the program in Japan and Korea was born as EU Gateway to Japan and Korea. So the new program, which combines all of them, combines also the names, keeping EU Gateway, which is how it was branded and known for Japan and Korea, and Business Avenues, which is how it was born and branded in Southeast Asia.
So you as a common, you have it as EU Gateway, and then in the target markets you make this.
I always refer to the program as EU Gateway Business Avenues.
Okay.
So in Europe it's known as EU Gateway Business Avenues. In the local markets it changes. So the text will change, but the visual part of the logo will remain the same.
But as a, let's say, as a branding expert, what is your personal opinion of this? I mean, how would you have done it from the beginning, from the scratch, from?
Without taking into account the context, I would have considered calling the program in this with only one name. But since before coming up with the name, of course I documented myself. Two things made me decide for this solution. First, it was a way to, as I said, keep the value from the previous different brandings, because they were different programs, one targeting Asia, Japan and Korea, and one targeting Southeast Asia, who were run at different time, and I wanted to keep. They were run at different time. So
now this is what I didn't know.
EU Gateway to Japan, including Korea, ran from the year 1990 till the year 2014. This is the first big leg. Korea was only added at the end, from 2008 to 2014. EU Business Avenues in Southeast Asia was a pilot which took place in the next 2 years. And after that, there was the new edition, this edition, which combined both the different experiences. So when if I had to come with a name, I would have called it with only one name. But since I knew about this history and I wanted to let's say leverage on the branding which had been done before, I decided that this could have been a good way of combining the different needs. Because I think also in branding, you need to find a compromise. It's not always what looks good on paper, but then you have to see also what's the history of the brand. This is not something new. It's something that existed for over 25 years, and you cannot just change it like this. If you change it like this, you will lose all the value, the brand equity that you have accumulated throughout these years. So I had to find a way to combine the two. And in my opinion, I'm okay. The program, I know that in Southeast Asia it's known as Business Avenues, while in Korea, China, and Japan is known as EU Gateway. But still, I'm okay, because these are specificities of the local markets. While in Europe, I always brand it as EU Gateway Business Avenues.
Okay.
You also mentioned, for Japan, the ambassador wanted it called EU Green.
That's a specific question from the EU delegation in Japan. I'm not sure it's the ambassador. I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or someone within the delegation.
But I'm sure it must be someone high in the hierarchy, and I guess it's the ambassador.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Japan, the program is called EU Gateway to Japan, or EU
Green Gateway.
Okay. Okay.
They refer to the program like this.
Okay.
But the logo is EU Gateway to Japan.
Yeah, in the website, yeah?
In the website.
And in the materials.
And in the material.
Okay.
But when they
like communications, email.
The communication written in Japanese will say EU Green Gateway to Japan.
Okay. Then, since it's related to the methodology, and you were speaking about like different milestones that were achieved. Well, the first one was like the branding. Could you mention the other ones you have in mind as a milestone in this methodological
milestone? I think it's 3 steps and not necessarily subsequential. Some can also be run in parallel. The first one definitely is branding. We couldn't start without defining who we were and how to present ourselves. And these not only from a point of view of external communication, but also internally. So working with a team in such a dispersed in such a wide region, namely Europe and Asia, we needed to have guidances and consistent approach on how to present ourselves. And we started with the brand that once approved, and it was not. If I can add something on the branding, was not only my decision. We decided the brand logo and the name of the program together with the client, taking a lot of also the client's inputs on the branding, being this just the visual part or the name of the program. So probably I should have added this before when I was talking about branding, that it was not just me sitting at my desk and decided, okay, this is blue, this is green, and that's the name. It was a discussion that went through for probably the first 3 or 4 weeks. So I started working on January the 4th, and on February the 9th, after a month, I have launched the program and released, officially released the branding guidelines, logo and everything else in a month. So during this month, not only have worked with the designer, but also, of course, I was working with the client through many meetings on how to call the program and assessing the different options that were available, both for the name and the visuals. So these, going back to your second question, Patricia, study on the branding and the development of the communication toolkit, which I released after a month on 9 February with all the team, was probably the first step I worked on, branding, so that we would know how to call ourselves and how to sell ourselves outside with companies and with other partners. In parallel, while after I had started working on the branding, I have also started to reach out to the key multipliers, especially one, the EEN, the Enterprise Europe Network, which according to the proposal was to be seen and treated as a key multiplier, was engaged. We had, I'm not sure, I think at least 2 meetings with Britta M, who was back then the person in charge of the Enterprise Europe Network, at the European Commission first, and then at their premises, and we tried to, we looked for points we had in common, for example, sectors or services which we could use to promote the program on their network, according to the client's desiderata. This was also a specific request from the European Commission, that we would engage and work closely with the Enterprise Europe Network. So I was developing the branding, I was starting to reach out for potential multipliers, and I was also trying to acquire critical mass content-wise, because once I've had the branding, once I have had the multipliers, and my website, I should have, of course, started to publish something.
Some message.
Yeah. So at the beginning, of course, the core business and the key content of this program are the business missions. Everything revolves around the business mission. Of course, they generate opportunity. We had already success stories from the previous edition, but if you want to have something fresh and new to attract the interest of the media, the multipliers, and potential companies, must be referred to the future of the program, so the new business mission. Once the first had started being defined, I could launch the website with the open call for the first two business missions, one in Korea and one in Southeast Asia. So these three things, according to the methodology which derives from the task B and C, were the first three steps I took. Branding, reaching out to multipliers, and content, let's say. These three steps.
Content development. Great, great. So we can pass to the next question.
And to what extent, from a communication perspective, to what extent do you feel does communications help in the program achieving its objectives, which is to promote or strengthen the presence of European countries in key markets?
Okay, so my role within the CMU is mainly focusing on general promotion and awareness, which is not to be confused with direct recruitment.
Sure.
So technically speaking, I try to coordinate with the coaching network when it comes to business mission promotion, but there's a point after which I cannot go, and when it's too specific, it's promoting a business mission too specifically, that's usually when the coaching network steps in and continues what I have started in terms of general awareness. My target audiences are not just the companies. I have different audiences. One that could be considered also internal is also for example, the partnership instrument itself. Part of my communication activities were also developed to let people who work for the partnership instrument understand the value of this program and understand how it works. Another target audience are my multipliers, which can be divided into EU member state permanent representation in Brussels, which then pass the message at the national level, and other organizations who are active in specific sectors, namely healthcare and medical technologies, green energy technologies, and so on. So we started. I'm sorry, Shana, I think I'm not answering to your question.
But it's good that you're defining the audiences, because then that gives us more scope. So please continue.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay, no, I just was trying to think, how do I go back to your initial question?
Sure, but it's fine. I mean, you mentioned the partnership instrument,
Yeah.
Some of the audiences, and the multipliers.
Yeah.
You said there were two types. Yeah, one is
one is I would call them like institutional multipliers, so the EU member states.
Okay.
They have a permanent representation. They all have a permanent representation in Brussels, and of course, that's for me. It's more of an internal audience.
Sure.
Of course, we have working for an EU-funded program. We have to give visibility, and we have to be transparent on how we use these resources and what opportunities also we offer to each of the single EU member states. So For example, every year I run a
This has to
campaign.
do, sorry, with the values of the EU. Okay, the transparency and the equal opportunities.
So every year I run a campaign targeting the EU member states, the permanent representation in Brussels, which was discussed a lot.